free motion quilting. Now that's a technique that many quilters wouldn't consider a beginner technique. Not so according to today's guest on Sewing with Nancy. Welcome Molly Hanson, who taught herself to do the free motion quilting very early in her career. It's good to have you here, Molly.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really excited to show how you can quilt on free motion quilting and install confidence in new quilters, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I've got 7 different designs. It can be just as easy as writing your own name, and if you can write your own name, I'm convinced you can free motion quilt, so I'm excited to show you that.
I know you will. Free motion quilting for beginners, that's what's next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, making a difference in sewing, quilting, crafting, and needle arts for over 30 years. Amazing designs and Class A needles.
As with any sewing or quilting project, the first step is to set up this machine. And Molly, this is really pretty easy. Straight stitching.
Yep.
And that's what you have your machine set?
Yeah, any machine will work, any size machine. It doesn't really matter how big the throat space is, and as long as you've got it on a straight stitch, and then you want to put your feed dogs down, and that's here on this machine.
Every machine will be a little bit different. You check your owner's manual to lower or sometimes
cover your feed dogs,
cover
depending on the machine.
So simple process there. And then the foot is important. The foot needs to ride just a little bit above the fabric. And so it'll be plastic or metal for a darning or free motion quilting foot that you'll have with your machine.
If you don't have open toe or closed toe, depending on what you prefer.
And then thread.
Right. I use cotton thread typically, but you could use cotton or cotton polyester, depending on what you like, but it should be a strong thread.
And this is a little different than maybe some people are accustomed using the same thread in the bobbin.
I do. I recommend using the same as in the bobbin. That way, if there are any little tension hiccups, you're not going to see one color come through. And by setting them both at the same, or by using both the same threads, I feel like it just makes everything go a lot smoother.
And this is for beginners. This is for experienced people.
Right.
We all want to have ease, right?
Right.
And it's a new project, so start with a new needle, a quilting needle, a top stitching needle.
I like a top stitching needle. I found or a quilting needle. Yeah, the thread just glides through better than a universal. So.
Now there are some accessories that you could use, but they're not mandatory.
Not required, but sometimes they can make life easier. So it's always nice to know about them. Like this silicone sliding mat that you can just put and line up so that your needle doesn't pierce through it, but it'll help everything just glide along a lot faster, or a lot smoother and easier. So.
It's kind of like ice skating.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you've got a bigger quilt with some drag, it can really help you out. And then another thing that people like to use, I don't typically wear them. Where I live, it's hot, and so my hands get hot. But a lot of people really like these because of the grip on the fingers, and it helps them move the quilt around a lot easier. So this is a common tool to make free motion quilting easier.
Now you'll see throughout this series that we're going to be stitching the various free motion designs on samples. And Molly, you don't throw away these samples.
No, I don't like waste, so I like to find fun things to do with them.
And you'll see that as we go through this program, but they're 12-inch samples, top fabric, bottom fabric, and then the batting.
Right. And we're using a fusible batting for this, and you can use any kind of batting, a cotton polyester batting, a regular cotton batting. For this quilt here, of course, you'd want to use something soft like a cotton, but for these, we're using a fusible. It gives the project a little extra body because it's a fusible fleece. It's a little heavier, and it works really well for three-dimensional projects especially.
But it only has fusible on one side.
That's
so
right.
you fuse it to the top layer, and then for these small samples, you don't really need anything else.
Yeah.
But you could pin it in the corners, I suppose, if you'd like. And then if you didn't have fusible fleece, you just could use curved basting pins.
You could, or you could use the spray.
Yes, there's adhesive quilting spray.
That's right. And that can
I
make
like
life
to
a
use
little
this sparingly, personally, but yes, you can put all the layers together. So now we have the setup at the machine, the setup for your sample to practice, and then eventually to make projects. So the next thing we're going to do is our first design, which is stippling. The most common free motion quilting technique is stippling. Its versatility, light texture, and ability to blend and not compete with the piecing make it a favorite among quilters. Here's the beginner's guide to stippling. Now you just saw Molly's creation of just a simple placemat and pot holder. Pot holders in my house don't look this nice, Molly.
Well, that one hasn't seen any real use yet. So.
But you can see that overall design, and it's just pleasant. But I have to admit, many quilters steer away from this because they think it's too difficult.
Right, yeah, and stippling isn't very difficult. You just have to get the feel of it. It's all about muscle memory, just like everything else. So.
Muscle memory, now that's a great term to keep in mind. And
right.
You start muscle memory by doing some sketching.
I recommend sketching. I feel like you can really work out the kinks when you sketch, and if you put your pen to the paper and you never leave it, you'll really get the same technique and feel as you would when you're actually quilting. So it'll give you a really good solid practice. So I like to work out my designs and sketch them first, and then I always feel much more comfortable when it's time to move to the needle.
And the key, as you just said, your pen doesn't leave the paper.
Pen does not leave the paper, and that helps you so much. And I like to make round U's, little puzzle shape type designs, and fit them in wherever you can, and just wiggle and wobble, and you just really get a feel for it once you get going.
And that's the way you'll manage or handle the fabric underneath the presser foot. And that foot is raised just a little bit above the fabric so it will glide.
Right.
Just like the
So
pen.
your hands, yeah, the pen is the needle and your hands are the paper, and you move the paper instead of but the concept is generally the same.
So when you begin, you sit up straight.
Yes, posture is important. You want to have a nice 90-degree line here with your elbow, and so if you're too short, you're sitting too short or sitting too tall, and you don't have this, you're going to get sore after a while. So it's really important to make sure you're set up properly for maximum success.
And then after setting up your sewing machine, which we did in our last segment, you're going to drop the bobbin thread.
Right. So that's the first step. And what you want to do is just put your needle down and then put it back up. And then if you do this and pull this string, then your thread comes right up and you're ready to go. So
you have the bobbin thread, the top thread, lower the presser foot again.
Yep.
And then
I like to take a few stitches in place just to kind of lock that in. And so I always start with just a few stitches before I move on to start stippling.
And do your magic.
All right, here we go. Oh.
And those little puzzle piece ends. And what I like about your technique is that you don't have to have it so small right away.
Oh no, yeah, especially when you're practicing. It's nice to sometimes practice on different scales, but I think you really want to be able to see what you're doing, and so I envision a real puzzle piece, a jigsaw puzzle piece, and you can go big or small or whatever, but just try to make them link. And
now, as you're sewing, we didn't really talk about cleaning the machine.
Right. That's a really important step, and one I think is so commonly overlooked. People forget that their machine is doing a lot of hard work and really needs to be taken well care of. And the lint buildup that you can get with free motion quilting is just incredible. And so if you're not careful and you don't clean it regularly, it can put a lot of extra stress on your machine. And oiling is also very important for that reason.
And while you're doing your sample, you can check the tension, because I think we need a little tension check. Why don't you show that we purposely do this, to show our mistakes, that we can make them too. But you have a little bit of a spider web showing.
Right, I do, and this is exactly what we don't want. And this is why we use the same color thread in the bobbin and the top, because if we didn't, and this was a different color, you'd really notice it. But if you're a few feet away now, you'd barely notice it.
So then in your sample, you can change the tension and just practice.
I'm going to increase mine here because I know it's not quite set the way I had it, and this will work better for me. So, but you can increase or decrease, and you should try both and see what's going to not give you that spider web look.
So as she's working on this, I'll just show you the stippling all over technique, and that you can make them large, you can make them small, and it's a great place to start your journey of free motion quilting. What free motion design should I quilt first? Where should I start? These are questions that you might ask yourself. Molly's answer is start by stitching your name. You've certainly written it thousands of times, so why not try to stitch it? The basic loop-de-loop design, just like cursive, allows you the freedom to incorporate words into free motion quilting designs. Well, Molly, working with this design and these cute little accessory organizers that you made, this one says keys in the inside, but it's kind of keys in reverse right here on the darker
Easier to
side.
read it on the darker
yeah,
side.
but you can see the loop-de-loop as well as on the practice sample that you've created. And you said love is a great word.
Love is a great word, and I love loop-de-loop and how versatile it is, and it really is like baby cursive, like a little E or a little L, and so the design just really blends beautifully with classic cursive writing, and you can incorporate really any word, although ones to start off with, maybe avoid a T or an I at the first, because these could be a little tricky. So words like love really do work well. Or Nancy.
Or Nancy or Molly.
There you go.
So you can do some practicing first.
Yeah, and I'll show you what it looks like on the sketchbook. Like I said, I always think you should start sketching first, and so make sure your pen doesn't leave the paper, and just start making random loops and let the pen go wherever you want. And make a loop, and then when you get to a nice area where you've got some open space, you just go into your cursive writing. And I like to think second grade cursive lessons, you know, nice basic round, just like your teacher taught you back in the day. And then you can go right back into the loop-de-loop without ever even breaking your design.
The way your hand moves is the way both hands are going to move the fabric.
Right, exactly. Really, the pen is like the needle, and the paper is like the fabric. So it's the opposite, but once you get the design worked out in your brain, then you can focus on all the other steps you need to stitch it well. But it helps really a lot to get it worked out on paper first, just so you know what to do next, and there's no guessing. And so that's what that looks like when you...
Very nice. So now to translate that to the fabric, Molly's already drawn up the bobbin thread and holds the threads taut. Same settings as before.
And I'm going to take a few stitches in place just to lock in those stitches, and then we'll just get going with this design. And you just want to curve around and make a loop every now and again. Just be real relaxed about it. This is one to really make sure your shoulders are soft and you're not holding too much tension in your arms and shoulders, and you're relaxed, and it helps make everything look nice and round and pretty.
I have to say, when I first did free motion quilting, I held my breath.
Not a good idea. No. So then when you come to a nice open space, you just start slowly quilting your words. And, you know, take your time with it, and try not to focus so hard you forget how to spell, which does happen from time to time.
And I think what we need to point out is, watch Molly as she quilts. You know, it's not a race.
No.
And she's moving the fabric very slowly, maybe sewing at a medium speed.
And when you're first beginning, that's a really good idea, not to try to rush yourself too much. Got plenty of time.
Because if you push the fabric too fast, the needle could break.
It could, or the thread could break, and so you want to avoid that and just go nice and slow and smooth, and that way your stitching feels more regular and it all just gets a rhythm together, which is really what you're looking for. And so then I can go into another word right here.
We're almost there, Molly. You got it.
There we go.
Excellent.
And that's what that looks like.
Very fun.
Thank you.
And you'll see later as we incorporate some of these other designs that you can put a variety of free motion designs and combine them as we have here. Pebbles and Chains consists of a space filled with as many touching circles as possible. Pebbles can fit just about anywhere. Even a single row of pebbles, called Chain of Pearls, can be beautiful in very small spaces. When Molly was introducing me to free motion quilting for beginners, I said, this is one thing I want to master. I really think this texture is great. And look at the Chain of Pearls. It can be big, it can be small. It has great appeal to me. And wait till you see this sample, the sample that she worked on. Look at that texture, just changing a piece of fabric. And Molly, your pebbles don't have to all be the same size.
No, no, varying them actually gives them more realistic look. So yeah, that's the fun of it. You really can go crazy with it, or make them look like bubbles or pearls and make them all the same size. So as much fun as you want to have and creative as you want to get. So
now this is a time where you must sketch.
it really helps. It really does, because this muscle memory is when you really need to learn. It's a little counterintuitive, but once you get it, it's very simple. So basically, when you're trying to do a chain of pearls or two circles next to each other, your tendency is always going to want to be to make a figure 8, because that's just the way your mind naturally works. But you want to avoid that tendency and start with a circle and then go back over it a little bit and then make your next circle and go back over and make another one. And what you get that way is nice nesting of the two circles together, versus if you were to do a figure 8, you would get two teardrop shapes together, which don't really look like pebbles once they're all stacked. So that's why this muscle memory really is important. And once you get going and you get used to going back over your lines a little bit, it's a lot easier.
Now, some people think of free motion quilting never to cross lines. That's not important.
No, no, it really isn't, and it really depends on the design. Sometimes the designs really require it.
Yes.
So this time, you know, if you go back over your lines, if you want to go all the way back around, it'll just add more texture and more depth, and you might need to get to where you need to move to the next time. So that's just the way. But you definitely don't want to just go right into your next circle. You always want to give yourself a little bit of space to nest that up nicely so it looks like a circle and not a teardrop shape.
So once you got the concept down in your mind, in your hands, you can go to fabric.
Right, right. So let me show you what that looks like on fabric. We're always going to take a few stitches in place, get going. And with pebbles, again, I'm going to go back over my line a little bit and vary the size as much as I can. I like that look because it looks more natural to me. And that just helps you go where you need to go. And we were even talking about a chain of pearls, and if you wanted to do that, you can fit that into any border. And all a chain of pearls is a single row of pebbles. But you can just go along a row or a line and do a single row, and this fits great into border designs or in like the spine of a feather when you get a little further down the road in your quilting. So yeah, it's fun.
You know, I've stippled many quilts, especially landscape quilts, and all I do is the stippling or maybe a little leaf design, and these ideas give me so much more flexibility.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to try it.
They are a lot of fun.
I have tried it, but can't wait to really do it.
There you go.
So notice again, I keep pointing out the speed of which Molly's working, the ease.
You want to really
breathing.
keep relaxed. That's the ticket. If you stress out, it's going to show in your quilting, and your lines will be jagged and they just won't look as pretty. So the softer and more relaxed you are, the better your quilting will look.
We've shown you 3 techniques in this first program of the series, and you just saw the pebbles, big, small. We're going to do the wood grain in the next program. Here you can see the all-over stippling, the writing of the words, and what interest it can bring to a basic quilt design, all for beginners or experienced quilters. From a colored pencil drawing to appliques, sixth graders learn to take their art to a new medium. Please welcome Maria de Groot. Maria is an involved mom and a quilting enthusiast who volunteers at her children's school to teach the art of quilting. Welcome to Sewing with Nancy, Maria.
Thank you so much.
Now, you are an enthusiastic quilter, as I stated, and you found that your kids were learning about radial art in class.
Yes,
And you've made quilts from their projects.
I did.
Here's the quilt, and give us a little rundown. We'll show the process, but this is an amazing quilt.
Okay, the kids do this radial art design in the fall. So they start with just a pencil drawing of their name in 1/8 of the pie of a circle. And she has them mirror image it and then repeat it to form what I thought were medallions. I didn't realize it was their names, and it hung on the hall for a long time, and I kept walking by going, that has got to be a quilt. That needs to be a quilt.
And you made it
I
happen.
did. I convinced the art teacher to let me come in and do art with them in the spring. So they did the pencil drawing in the fall, and then we transferred it to fabric in the spring.
This is a great process, and Maria made for me my own quilt block. And
Yeah.
why don't you go over the process with our
Sure.
viewers?
I started with a circle and then folded it into 8 pieces like a piece of pie. In one of the pieces of pie, I wrote Nancy's name.
And then they used chalk to,
It's actually a charcoal pencil.
excuse me,
And you draw over it and then flip it to get that mirror image and draw over it again. So sometimes at the end, their original pattern is destroyed
Sure.
from drawing through it.
So here's what they do. Here's my Nancy, and then Nancy in a mirror image, and then times 8, or
Yeah.
4 of each.
And depending how the
Yeah.
kids arrange their letters, it can have a very symmetrical look like this, or it can have a very chunky or real artistic looking design when they're done.
And then they get to choose color.
Yeah.
And what do you tell them about color at this point?
At this point, I have nothing to do with it. When they're doing the colored pencil, that's all the art teacher. When I come in the spring is when I have a few things to share with them.
And here's kind of what you, the process.
Yep. From that circle, I use paper-backed fusible web. So if you look at the art along with it, all of the ends on the outside are drawn here. And by fusing it to the back side of the fabric, I've now created fabric ends instead of colored pencils. So then they have to do that with all of the letters in their circle.
And here we go.
So here is the radial art in fabric form. So they go from paper to fabric.
Really, really fascinating.
Yeah. And I make them do all the tracing. They do all of their own cutting, and they even iron everything on. So some of them aren't exactly circle when we're done.
Oh, it's
but
okay.
Because I can sew, I can fix that later on.
Sure. So you then fuse it, and I do the stitching.
I do.
Lay it out in the great black background. If we take another look
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
big quilt and some of the medallions, the name medallions, why don't we start with Hope?
Sure.
So here you can see the Hope circle, and
Okay.
that one's pretty distinguishable.
It is. It is. With only 4 letters, the letters are quite large, and that is a little bit easier to see.
And another one you'd like to share?
Regan is another one. She has crossed over her E's and some of the letters, so they're mixed up a little bit, but her name still goes from the outside in.
And fun colors that they all chose and worked with.
Yeah, I brought in a bucket of fabric and I said, here's your new colors. So they could do what they did with colored pencil, but I told them they are the artists, just like they were in the beginning. They're recreating their art into another form, so go ahead and pick what they like.
And let's look at one more.
How about, well, Josh is red, white, and blue. He's hard to see, but it is a very cool effect too,
And you did that in honor of...
of a relative that's in the service, so that was kind of cool.
And Maria used this as a fundraiser.
I did. The quilt is donated to the school. They have an auction in September, so I have the second quilt in progress already.
Good for you.
And
Well-
my own child will be in the 3rd one this year, so
Well-
that's kind of fun.
Well, what a great, what a great project. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing this. What a
welcome.
great story.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I hope that you've enjoyed this segment of Sewing with Nancy, and will be back with us next time for the second part of our program on free motion quilting for beginners. And if you'd like to find out more information, go to nancyzieman.com, where you can re-watch this program. You can click on videos, watch 4 seasons of programming, and find out more of Nancy's Corner guests. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.
Molly Hanson has written the Free Motion Quilting for Beginners book that serves as a reference for this 2-part series. The book includes the fundamentals of free motion quilting along with 10 practical projects. It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2819. Order item B1248. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzieman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Pellon. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.